Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Dsgb Fantasy Football League Weekly Recap. I'm your host and commissioner, AST1. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and follow me if you like content like this. Let's not waste any more time and let's get into the recap.
You've got to beat the man!
And that's where we begin with the Week 9 league notes. After a close game that was decided on Monday Night Football, the football team took over the number 1 spot for at least 1 week against Menace to the League. The football team is sitting atop the standings with a 7-2 record. Menace to the League falls to number 2 with a 6-3 record. He is joined by Z-Boys and Bristol Vikings. In the middle of the pack, we have Dream Team Redemption, the Apocalypse, and Hancock County, Georgia, all with 5-4 records. In the hunt for a playoff spot, we have Summertime and Y Giants, both with 4-5 records. Next is Crimson Ballers, who is on the outside looking in with a 3-6 record. And rounding out the bottom, we have the 2-7 Team Harding and the 1-8 Team Untouchables. Next is the projected playoff bracket as of Week 9. If the playoffs started today, the football team would be the number 1 seed with the bye, followed by the Dream Team Redemption in the 5th seed versus Bristol Vikings in the 4th seed. Next would be the Apocalypse as the 6th seed versus Z-Boys, who is the 3rd seed. And finally, rounding out the playoff bracket, we have Hancock County, Georgia, the number 7 seed versus Menace to the League as the 2 seed. Moving right along, we have Bristol Vikings, who is currently on a 5-game winning streak, followed by Z-Boys with a 3-game winning streak. Hancock County, Georgia, and the football team are both on a 2-game winning streak. Next, here are the rankings on how teams are scoring so far through 9 weeks. The top 5 is Menace to the League, NY Giants, Dream Team Redemption, Crimson Ballers, and rounding out the top 5 is the football team. Moving right along, let's look at the top 5 performers from Week 9 in fantasy. Number 5, we have Tennessee Volunteers product, quarterback Joshua Dobbs. Dobbs wasn't expecting to play in Week 8, but he was summoned from the bench when Vikings starting quarterback Jaron Hall was injured in the first quarter. Dobbs, a career backup, duly delivered a masterclass as a quick study. Dobbs completed 20 of 30 passes for 158 yards and 2 touchdowns. Dobbs also had 7 carries for 66 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. Dobbs had 28.6 fantasy points on the day. Number 4, we have the Houston Cougars product, wide receiver Tank Dell. Dell, who the Texans drafted in the 3rd round of this year's draft, had a career high in fantasy. Dell had 6 receptions on 11 targets for 114 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Dell was electric on the field, and one of the reasons they won the game against Tampa Bay on Sunday. Dell had 29.6 fantasy points on the day. Number 3, we have Oklahoma Sooners product, quarterback Jalen Hurts. Hurts, who isn't a stranger to this list, was very efficient and is living up to Summertime's top overall fantasy draft selection. Hurts was 17 of 23 for 207 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. Hurts also got it done on the ground with 10 carries for 36 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. Hurts also had 29.6 fantasy points on the day. Number 2, we have Mississippi State Bulldogs product, quarterback Dak Prescott. Prescott, who came up short in the win-loss column, had a fantasy statistical game. Prescott was 29 of 44 for 374 yards and 3 touchdowns. Prescott also chipped in on the ground with 6 carries for 14 yards. Prescott had 33.4 fantasy points on the day. And last but not least,
with the 2nd pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select C.J. Stroud, quarterback, Ohio State.
Stroud finished 30 of 42 for 470 yards and 5 touchdowns. This set the record for most passing yards by a rookie quarterback in a single game, breaking Mark Bulger's former mark. Aside from setting a new rookie record in passing yards, Stroud also made more league history with his passer rating of 147.8. Stroud is the 6th player in league history to pass for more than 450 yards and 5 touchdowns without an interception. Stroud had 51 fantasy points on the day. Next, I'll give a shout out to the Houston Texans fans. You had 2 players make the top 5 fantasy football performers list. Now let's look ahead at the Week 10 matchups preview. First, we have the 5-4 Hancock County, Georgia versus the 2-7 Team Harding. Hancock County is coming off a hard-fought win against NY Giants. Hancock is looking to stack wins and continue his push towards the playoffs. Hancock will turn to his young rookie receivers for help against Team Harding, who was the victim of CJ Stroud's onslaught last week. Even though Team Harding isn't having the season he wants, Team Harding still had the second highest score last week and has a solid roster led by Jamar Chase and Mercurial quarterback Sam Howell. Next, we have the 6-3 Menace to the league versus the 4-5 NY Giants. Menace is coming off a crushing loss against the football team. He will look to get back in the win column and battle his way back to the #1 spot in the league. On the other side, the NY Giants is coming off a tough loss as well against Hancock County, Georgia. NY Giants will look to end a 2-game losing streak against arguably the best team, Menace to the league. This should be a high-scoring game since both league managers are the #1 and #2 scoring teams in the league. Next, we have the 7-2 football team versus the 1-8 team Untouchables. The football team is coming off a hard-fought win against Menace to the league. He will look to extend his 2-game winning streak and try to keep a hold of the #1 seed. On the flip side, Team Untouchables is on a 4-game losing streak since his blowout win against Hancock County, Georgia. On paper, this looks like a completely one-sided matchup. However, stranger things have happened in the league and definitely in fantasy football. Next, we have the 3-6 Crimson Ballers versus the 5-4 The Apocalypse. Crimson Ballers is coming off his second weekly winner high scorer in the league in large part because of CJ Stroud's monster performance. Crimson Ballers still has an outside chance at the playoffs if he continues to stack wins and win out. On the flip side, we have The Apocalypse, who is on a 2-game losing streak and will look to get back in the win column against the 4th highest scorer in the league. Next, we have the 6-3 Bristol Vikings versus the 4-5 Summertime. Bristol Vikings pulled out a win against the Apocalypse last week. Bristol, who is on a 5-game winning streak and is currently sitting as the #4 seed if the playoffs started today, has made this year his personal revenge tour after last year's winless season. Bristol will look to extend his win streak to 6 against Summertime, who is 1-3 in his last 4 games. Summertime will have to go into this battle without his star quarterback Jalen Hurts, who is on a bye this week. Should be an exciting matchup with both teams having postseason aspirations. And finally, we have Week 10's Game of the Week.
It's unbelievable the condition of both men, but the Russian challenge.
I must break you.
We have the 5-4 Dream Team Redemption versus the 6-3 Z-Boys. Dream Team is coming off a narrow win over Team Untouchables. Dream Team has a 3-1 record over the last 4 games. He will be without his star tight end Travis Kelce, who is on a bye this week. On the flip side, we have Z-Boys, who is on a 3-game winning streak and currently the #3 team in the standings. Will look to extend his win streak to 4 against Dream Team Redemption, who is the 3rd highest scorer in the league. This should be another instant classic. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoy this content. Comment below who you think will win their matchup this week. Until next time, AST1 signing off.